welcome. Thank you so much for joining us tonight for the very first KOHLER Bold Live Talk series in Asia Pacific. I'm Suzy Annetta, Editor-in-Chief of Design Anthology magazine, and I'm going to be hosting tonight's talk. Before I introduce our very special guest, I would like to head to Andrew Yang, President of Kitchen and Bath Asia Pacific for KOHLER Company, with a special message from Shanghai. Over to you, Angel.
Good evening, everyone. This is Angel Yang from KOHLER Company. I'm really excited to see all of you here virtually, and thank you for joining us tonight at the KOHLER Bold Talk Live. We're certainly operating in a new reality globally, with the COVID-19 changing many aspects of our daily lives. I really hope that you and your loved ones are keeping very safe, and the situation will be much better in all countries. KOHLER Company is committed to do everything we can to provide a high level of services while ensuring the healthy and the safety of our associates, customers, and business partners. We continue to delegate ourselves to helping you and your business minimize any possible disruption. We can be really thankful for the development of the modern technologies that break down the boundaries between the people from across the world and allow us to come together at this moment. This KOHLER Bold Talk event is a new virtual marketing initiative aimed at bringing the latest design trends to all of you from a virtual platform and to share the design inspiration by experts. Well, today it's so great to have the renowned interior designer, André Fu, join us as our first speaker. André is the creative mind behind the interiors of the city's the newest ultra-luxury hotel, the Regis Hong Kong. He will share his design inspiration. To me, it is a very touching project. It is a brilliant combination of the past and the present. It is very stylish design, while you feel like a home as well. I'm very happy to see our KOHLER and Calista products there as well, and it brings the gracious living elements to the project. I'm also very excited to hear from Andrew, and he will share and provide the insight of the post-virus trend on the travel and the design of the hospitality space. And now, before I give in the floor to André, I hope and sincerely wish each of you will stay very safe and healthy. This is hard days along the way, but at KOHLER we believe we will come through this together stronger than ever. KOHLER together we can do this. We always have and we always will. Thank you.
Thanks, Angel. So I would like to give a very, very welcome to our guest this evening, which is André Fu, who hardly needs an introduction, but of course the founder and creative director of Hong Kong-based AFSO, who are responsible for some of the world's most beautiful hotels. But tonight we're going to be talking specifically about the St. Regis project in Hong Kong. André is going to give us a presentation, talk through a little bit about his design approach and inspirations, and maybe some other things. I'm going to ask him some questions after that, and then you'll have an opportunity to ask André some questions as well. So please type those through. We'll have access to those questions at the end. And yeah, please make the most of the opportunity to ask André whatever questions that you have. So I'm going to hand over to André for his presentation.
All right. Well, we're going to take a few minutes to talk through St. Regis in Hong Kong. We'll start with the first slide, perhaps. Okay. Well, for the St. Regis Hong Kong, I think the whole idea is we really want to create something that celebrates a genuine Hong Kong spirit. And it's a high-rise building, purpose-built. And the notion is it's really a curated dimension. And because I'm from Hong Kong, I really wanted to create a project that is not superficial or kind of like a foreign person's view of the city. It's something that really tells people what my hometown is about. So it's looking at a lot of the old elements of Hong Kong, the old police station, the cobbled pavements, the old street lamps. And these are some of the key inspirations behind the hotel. So when it comes to the arrival experience, all guests will actually come through a vast drop-off area that is pretty much nestled inside the building. And on the corner of this is a double height doorway that really marks the sense of arrival into this mansion. So as you can see on the screen right now, this is what we have created, a beautiful water feature on the right-hand side, and then a pair of double doors leading into the mansion itself. And a closer look at the door itself, with two beautiful topiary trees on the side, marking that sense of arrival. And then up to level 3, the great room, is the main floor plate where all guests arrive at. It starts off with the right-hand side with all the living spaces, the check-in areas, coming into the high tea area, the great room, and then the St. Regis bar at the top left. So the visual experience is really governed by this dramatic transition from somewhere that is quite kind of intimate to a really high ceiling space that almost measures about 10 meters in height. So you can see from the image, this is the first point of arrival with an emerald green lacquered ceiling, wrapping from ceiling all the way down through a tunnel experience, and then coming into a grand staircase, and then a triple height reception area where guests check in. And we've created these beautiful screens going all the way up the ceiling to really create a layered experience and to make this really dramatic space very, very intimate. And you can see here how it transformed in the evening with dramatic lighting, and that vista that is very memorable for a lot of customers. Here it shows a bespoke chandelier that is created by Lasvit and myself. And then on the other side, the fireplace with a braided mosaic on the wall. Coming onto it, some small vignettes of the gate or the screen inspired by the old Hong Kong windows. And then coming into the drawing room. And then the St. Regis bar, one of the most iconic part of the hotel, with this exotic mirror. And then leading up onwards to the terrace outside. And then coming on to two specialty restaurants in the hotel, Long Vol, that is conceived with the notion of a chic, French, casual, but luxurious dining salon. As you can see in the middle, white marble sculpture by American artist Helen Rubenfeld. And then also in the hotel is Ren, our signature Chinese restaurant, that is inspired by a modern interpretation of a Chinese tea pavilion. So we created this freestanding structure inside the restaurant to create this iconic moment within the hotel. As well as the two restaurants, there are also other facilities within the hotel, but I think the key highlight are the guest rooms, where we've created a kind of look that really mimics what Hong Kong feels to me, a place where Eastern cultures and Western cultures collides and crosses, with Chinese lanterns, Western furniture in some ways, and a silhouette and a room that is truly modern, clean, contemporary, and comfortable. The bathroom is obviously a highlight. We feature some beautiful bathtubs, tapwares, and you can see from here the whole vignette looking down with the full height marble on the left-hand side, and then onwards to some of the closer looks at this basin. Actually, I'd like to highlight this basin because it's obviously from KOHLER, one of our long-term partners, and I've been using this basin since the Upper House, which was built 10 years ago. So it's remained one of my favorites. Coming into other views of the hotel, this is the presidential suite on the 29th floor of the hotel. And then some of the more luxurious bathrooms here with an island top, and also a very generous twin vanity. Lastly, I would like to share some images of the athletic club in the hotel, where we have some cozy changing areas, as well as a pool that truly speaks of the spirit of the mansion. And last but not least, the spa treatment room, as well as the Astor Ballroom, a place that's dedicated to events and celebration. As you can see here, onyx floor on the right, I guess one of my favorite stone materials, and then the Astor Ballroom itself with the symmetrical approach and full height lacquer panels that really celebrates the spirit of the St. Regis hotel that's dedicated to the Hong Kong living.
Very nice. Thanks for the presentation, André. So I've got a couple of questions for you.
Okay.
You talked a little bit about some of the very Hong Kong specific inspirations for this project. I'm wondering what your understanding was of the St. Regis brand before starting on this project, and maybe if there were any challenges trying to interpret that brand and that history and that philosophy into the Hong Kong context.
Well, I still remember walking into St. Regis as a teenager. I first went to New York when I was about 17, and it was an iconic hotel. And I still remember that I was kind of pleasantly surprised because I was expecting a very monumental hotel with a huge lobby. But in fact, it was a very intimate kind of lobby, and there's a kind of a passageway that kind of guides you down. There is kind of like a cognac room on the side, and then going on to the drawing room. And then at the end, I remembered a bar, which is actually St. Regis bar, with a beautiful mural at the back. So when I was given the opportunity to create the St. Regis in Hong Kong, actually I shortly after that, I had the opportunity to be in New York, and I revisited the hotel. And I thought that what would be really amazing is if I could reinterpret the essence of that experience, the essence of the proportion of the original St. Regis in the context of Hong Kong. And I think that is pretty much the vision that I really wanted to do at the time.
Mm. You talked a little bit about intimate spaces and a bit of a journey, I suppose, through the New York hotel. I'm wondering how you would describe how you've designed that journey or that sequence of spaces in the Hong Kong property.
Well, I think when I was showing the slides just now, I think when you walk in or you get driven into the hotel, there's this kind of a double height doorway that really unveils the experience of the hotel. And when guests are transported up to level 3 and they go into the lift lobby and then going through that tunnel with the green lacquered panel with the artwork at the end, and then turn into the triple height space, I think that transition was, in a way, carefully curated. It was choreographed in a way, but I think that element of surprise and to have the St. Regis bar being nestled right at the end of the room, and it's kind of like a little secret. I think that spirit of transitional spaces, the spirit of very contrasting proportion, I think that kind of created the St. Regis experience. And it's by no means a hotel that tried to tell the Hong Kong story in a literal way. That's what I've been trying to avoid. And for certain, I have no conscious effort to talk about something that is quintessentially Asian or Western, because that's the Hong Kong that we're living in. It's very transversal, it's very organic in terms of the lifestyle and in terms of the expression of what I'm trying to bring in.
Mm. And well, with KOHLER being our host for this evening's talks, it's only natural that we would want to talk about bathrooms. And you've mentioned the KOHLER sinks or basins that you've used, and the tapware is also Calista. I'm wondering if there's something that you can tell us a bit about, your inspiration for the bathroom designs. It's something that I feel like is maybe a signature touch of yours, these beautiful, luxurious bathrooms. But if there's a specific inspiration behind the design of these bathrooms, and maybe any favourite details that you can share.
Well, I think for any hotels, the bathroom is probably one of the highlights, because you typically go to a hotel wanting to rest from a day's work or from a day of travel. So when it comes to the bathroom, it needs to feel very much an experience on its own, and for guests to come in and feel that they're welcome and they feel at ease. Everything needs to be in the right place. I think that's probably the essence of what a bathroom design should be. It's not about how luxurious the products are. Obviously, they play a key role. But when things are in the right place, when the mirror is serving its purpose, that it's giving light so you can look at your face properly, when the basin are well proportioned so that the water is not splashing everywhere, when the bathtub is at the right height so that when you go in, it feels generous, it feels comfortable. I think all of these are probably some very pragmatic considerations, but it's so easy to get it wrong. Seeing it purely from a design perspective. So I always think of these experiences from a first-hand kind of perspective. Really think of the customer and how they actually feel when they're using the physical space.
And so it's kind of difficult to talk about bathrooms without talking about well-being. I guess in some ways we see those two things as being connected, and the bathroom being somewhat of a sanctuary. I'm wondering if there are important features other than what you've already mentioned that you think should be included, or things that you're looking for in a bathroom in general, whether it be in a hotel or in a residence.
Interestingly, I think a bathroom has many roles to play. I think in daytime, it's a place where you kind of re-energize yourself from a night's sleep, and it's the place where you typically spend most time in before you leave the room. In the evening, it's probably a place where you cleanse yourself from a long day, hopefully to rejuvenate yourself, calm yourself before the night's sleep. So I guess it's not purely kind of like just a functional space. I think emotionally it has a strong role to play. And I think together with lighting, it can create a very different feeling, be it the day or the night. So when it comes to hospitality, for certain, the bathroom plays a key role. And I guess for any residential homes, it's also terribly important.
I agree. I'm wondering if you have noticed a shift towards wellbeing becoming more of an important topic or design aspect in the hotels that you're designing, whether that's something that clients are asking for, whether there's been a shift, and if so, what you imagine that might look like in the future, just sort of incorporating wellbeing into hospitality spaces.
Well, I guess the notion of well-being for me triggers more of my personal phrase, essence of experience. And I think of that being a space where people go in and they feel comfortable, simply. It's not about how dramatic it looks. It's not about how many social media posts you can generate. It's about how you feel when you go into a space. And I think living in the social media age, it's very much a case of addressing to a designer's need to create something that is visually exciting. But then again, what triggers the emotional connection between a guest and a space is that kind of intangible experience. It's the feeling of being connected to a space, the feeling that a space is designed around you. And I guess with St. Regis, what we try to do is exactly that. I wasn't thinking of theatre, despite the 3 meters high, the triple height ceiling lobby. But it's very much about how a guest feels. So we kind of broke down the spaces into layers. We try to make it intimate. It's always a juxtaposition of how to make a dramatic space intimate and to make an intimate space cozy and comfortable for the customer.
That's interesting. I think we've also seen a bit of a trend or a shift in frequent travellers experiencing these beautiful hotels such as the St. Regis and wanting to emulate that style, but also that feeling at home. And I wonder if you might have any tips for our audience in how to create a sanctuary within their own home, whether it be in the bathroom or another space that caters towards their well-being. How do you bring that into your own personal space?
Well, I guess for homes, I always tell people to invest heavily in your kitchen and bathrooms because that is the backbone of a home. Use a lot of decorative lighting. Use a lot of pendants because that creates an ambience and it can easily provoke a very soft silhouette inside a residential space. So these are my 2 little tips, I guess.
Okay, that's great. So I'm actually really curious to know about how you feel about trends in general and if you even pay attention to them.
Well, I guess we're all part of, a bigger picture. So I guess I am aware of trends per se. I'm very reluctant to put words to my design style and to talk about trends because a lot of the projects that I do, like the St. Regis, took about 5 years in the making, and by no means I could predict trends that will be relevant to the market in 5 years' time. So I guess it's just a very kind of organic process to come up with a storyline for hotel, to stay truthful to it throughout the process. And hopefully the results will speak for itself.
I think my next question is going to address the elephant in the room. I mean, we're sitting here doing this live because it's not physically possible to do an event at the moment because we're filming this in the middle of a pandemic, which means that travel has become almost impossible or impossible. And obviously that's going to affect the way we travel and perhaps where we go. And I'm wondering if you think that it's also going to change hotel design and what that might be. So what do you see the future? What do you imagine the future of hotel design being post-COVID-19? Do you have any insights for us?
I think we touch on the subject a little bit. I mean, it's all down to creating spaces that are comfortable. Especially now, there's a growing desire when people are not allowed to travel. Staycations become the new form of travel. So when spaces has the feeling of an escape from your usual surroundings, perhaps when spaces provoke a feeling of residential calmness, I think that degree of touch to an environment will eventually generate interest. And I know that some of the spaces that I've done in Hong Kong, for example, those that has a pantry, for example, those that have a unique bathroom, for example, would naturally gravitate or attract people to go on staycations. So it's quite an interesting proposition.
We'll have to keep our eye out for that. And so, André, I know that you've been travelling quite a lot. Obviously, you run a practice that is very international in terms of where your projects are based. And I'm curious, and I'm sure I'm not the only one that's curious to know how you're adjusting to the new normal and, without being able to travel to visit sites and potentially present to clients. How has this changed the way that you're working?
Well, I think my life in the past 4 months has been very, very different compared to my life in the past 10 years. I think the first 2 months I was really enjoying it because I didn't have to kind of pack my suitcase every 3 days, and I can literally sit in front of my desk and draw. I love drawing, and it's like the perfect time. I had no Zoom meetings. It's just to kind of focus on the desk. I think towards April and May, things starts to pick up globally. So there's a lot of go-to-meetings, there's a lot of Zoom meetings, all times of the day. What's interesting is I realized the quality of work that we need to produce, because the meeting is purely from the screen. The quality of the work needs to be even better because there's no physical interaction. I cannot observe the facial expression of my clients as I speak. So the quality of what's on the screen becomes so much more critical. So it's actually pushing myself to take every single presentation, every single workshop more seriously.
Is there anything that you'll miss after this time is over? Will it be that time sitting drawing?
Well, I think we will adjust in the future. I think there are perhaps less of a need to travel constantly unless there are very specific inspections on sites or in artisan workshops to see prototypes. And I guess a lot of the interaction, we can do it via the internet.
It's going to be interesting to see how we will adjust to that. So I think that we're going to now see if we have any questions. And I'm not ignoring you. I'm taking my phone out because this is where the questions are coming through. So let me just see if we have some questions from the audience. Okay, we have a couple. So the first one is about the inspiration when creating the first concept of St. Regis. So you talked a little bit about that, but I wonder if maybe you could elaborate on maybe some of the inspirations behind specific details of the screens and maybe some of the colours that you've used.
Well, the hotel is situated in Wan Chai, and Wan Chai itself is a very unique neighbourhood. It's very eclectic. To some extent, it truly represents old Hong Kong because there are old pawn shops that are there. There's the old police stations. And I was just kind of wandering around the area and just looking at details of buildings, looking at architrave, looking at moldings and try to extract elements of that. By no means I wanted to create anything neutral from the start. So I was looking at these moments, and I guess when people are shown the hotel, especially when I walk them into the hotel and I point at specific corners and I tell them the story behind it, people always have a smile because it's so familiar, but it's so different in the context of the way we tell that story.
Now, there's another really good question here that sort of follows on from that, which is materials and finishes, and if there were any that you sourced locally that you could talk about, or perhaps local artisans and artists from Hong Kong that you incorporated into the space.
Yes, we try to work with some local artists. I think in the entrance area, we've worked with a really amazing Hong Kong artist called Chris Hume that created a beautiful painting that is about the streetscapes of Hong Kong. So I think that was the most important piece that we have placed in the hotel. So very, very happy with that.
Okay. Interesting. There's another really good question here, which sort of follows on from the question that I had earlier about the new normal, which is asking about main lobbies and some of the public spaces and how you think perhaps those might change and the space that's dedicated to those public spaces. Do you think that we will see a shift in that in the future due to the pandemic?
I think that's a very big question. I think a lot of the times it really depends on the brand, and it really depends on the context of the project. I mean, there are projects that we are focusing on the notion of co-working and co-living at the same time. In the current situation, there's also the desire to create spaces that are more intimate and that has a degree of kind of privacy to some extent. I guess for me, we tend to work with properties that are generally on the kind of upper end of the market. So I guess for those clients, the desire for spaces that are intimate and private is a given. I guess when it comes to a more kind of dynamic brand that are kind of working with the buzz and the energy, I think those hotels will become even more interesting to design in the future.
There's another really good question here, which I like because I think I can anticipate your answer. I've had the benefit of being able to interview you a number of times now. The question is about designing different projects in different ways that perhaps still has an essence of André Fu in there. And I know from my conversations with you that you don't like to repeat yourself. And something like the St. Regis Hotel is obviously very different looking aesthetically to, say, the Upper House and even other hotel projects that you've done in Hong Kong. So I think this is a great question. How do you make sure that they have their own identity, but maybe keep a little bit of André Fu in there? Is it a subconscious thing or...?
I guess I think it kind of comes to a little bit to a book that I've been working on with Catherine Shaw, a writer that I've known very well. And I think every time we start a project, I actually try to question myself, why did I take on that project in the first place? And in many cases, I've taken on brands or worked with brands that kind of took people by surprise. A lot of people know me through the Upper House, which has a very kind of quiet, calm language or aesthetics, to some degree minimal for a lot of people. And when I decide to work with two iconic historical brands, the Waldorf and St. Regis, I think I'm kind of trying to tell myself not to let people formulate what an André Fu experience should be. So in the process, I typically look at the heritage of the hotel brand, be it a new brand or an old brand. I look at the context of the city, sometimes the neighborhood. Like in Singapore, I've done 2 hotels in the midst of renovating a third. In Hong Kong, I've also had the privilege of working on 4 key properties along the harbour. So I guess it's not just about telling a story about the city, it's about a different aspect of the city, the energy that we're trying to create and the feeling that we're trying to provoke. Naturally, because I design it, it might be what people would kind of relate to as an André Fu space, but I hope they will be surprised in general, but find that kind of André Fu moment within it.
That's a nice way of saying it. There's another question here. I'm not sure how much time we have left for more, but I think this is great because it really relates to the situation that we're in right now, and I'm imagining that it's come from another designer. With all of these Zoom meetings and video conferencing with clients, the question is, how are you presenting material boards digitally? Because obviously clients, they're such a great sales tool. People love to touch and feel those. So how has your experience been presenting those to clients in this recent period?
Well, first of all, we we set up material trays, and we usually take photograph of these trays in daylight. It's very important to do it in daylight so you can see the materials in its natural behavior. The other thing we do is we use WhatsApp to take videos of the trays, and sometimes we pick it up and let them kind of feel it on a more kind of interactive manner. So I wouldn't say it's highly innovative, but it's ways we try to navigate around that. I even thought of setting up a camera on the ceiling so that it can look down. But let's see.
Yeah, I think that's really great advice. This is a really good question. I think we've got time for one more. I guess this is alluding to the fact that perhaps you're not unlike an artist. How do you know when a project is finished? You need to stop adding.
Well, I think this is a difficult question because there is always the pursuit of something better in my work. And perhaps I have grown to be more confident about making decisions. Having talked and communicated with a lot of clients, having seen the performance of some of the spaces that I've designed. And I guess when it comes to making a decision, I think I'm seeing it through the person that I'm imagining that I'm designing for. I'm seeing it through the client that I'm working with, and try to balance what the best solution is. And I guess once there is that level of consideration, a decision can be made and a design can be concluded at that point.
Great answer. I think that's all we have time for. So a big thank you to you, André, for joining us. In fact, we should be thanking André for letting us be here. He's actually hosting us in his office. So thanks for having us. Thanks for being here.
With the new book on the background.
Please go buy the new book. I'd also like to say a big thanks to KOHLER, obviously, for organising these talks. And please stay tuned because there will be more in the series. And thanks for joining us. We really hope that you've enjoyed this evening's session. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.